What a week it has been in the National Football League. There hasn't been one pass thrown, one touchdown scored, but it's been an exciting week. I'm sure a lot of that has to do with the fact that there's nothing else going on in the world of sports right now. Normally we would be in the middle of March Madness, the NBA playoff chase would be heating up. The NFL, in everything else's absence, has dominated the news cycle this week, giving us a nice distraction from everything else that's been going on. By the way, if you haven't already done so, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button. Click the notification bell to receive all notifications from the channel. You can follow me on Twitter at KC_BTL84. Behind the Line, episode number 60 today. In the span of a couple of days, the NFC South has become the toughest division in the NFL, which, for Saints fans like myself and an aging Drew Brees, it's not the news that you really want to hear coming out of NFL free agency. New Orleans has dominated this division the past 3 years, been guaranteed at least one home playoff game since 2017. That could all change in the upcoming 2020 season. Tampa Bay was loaded last year. Their problem was the turnovers caused by Jameis Winston. With one signing, Tom Brady, they're an automatic Super Bowl contender from being 7-9 in 2019. Carolina's going to be better with Teddy Bridgewater running the show. The NFC South is stacked. You still got Matt Ryan in Atlanta. The NFC South is going to be loaded next year. The question right now is, what does the future look like for Cam Newton and Jameis Winston? I told you guys a couple of months ago when Matt Rule had his introductory press conference in Carolina that the team was going to move on from Cam Newton. I mean, it just made sense. You have a new rookie head coach. The team is going into somewhat of a rebuild. You have a regime change. You don't keep your old franchise quarterback around, especially when he's coming off of 2 seasons where he's been injured. Cam Newton is pissed off about Carolina bringing in Teddy Bridgewater and announcing that they were putting him on the trading block. He's in the final year of his contract. Like I said, been hurt the past 2 years. I'm not a Cam Newton hater like a lot of people where I live are. But other than his MVP season when Carolina went 15-1 and made it to the Super Bowl, he's been a really pedestrian quarterback for most of his career. Not bad, but far from great. He didn't help his case. He didn't help endear himself to other teams by saying that he wasn't looking and didn't want to be traded from Carolina. That this was the team's decision. They want him gone. Before I get to potential landing spots for Cam Newton and whether or not I believe that he's going to be a starting quarterback next year, let me just get to Teddy Bridgewater for a second. Does Teddy Bridgewater make the Carolina Panthers better? Yes. But he's not better than Cam when he was fully healthy. Bridgewater doesn't make Carolina a Super Bowl contender like Tom Brady does in Tampa. Teddy Bridgewater is not a game-changing quarterback. He's going to keep you in games by not making mistakes, but he's not going to light the world on fire. When he led the Saints to 5-0 in Drew Brees' absence last year, it wasn't Teddy Bridgewater winning those games. It was the defense. Some games it was the special teams. Bridgewater limited mistakes and didn't put the Saints in position to lose. He did exactly what Sean Payton asked of him. But Teddy Bridgewater's the kind of quarterback that's got to have everyone around him be good to great for the team to win. He isn't a guy that can overcome a bad defense. Christian McCaffrey's going to have to carry the bulk of the offensive load for this team, like he's been doing most of his career. Even in Bridgewater's best season back in 2015, he only threw for 3,200 yards, averaged about 200 yards a game. So Carolina will be better, but they're not automatically serious contenders because they went out and signed Teddy Bridgewater. Anyway, back to Cam Newton. I have doubts, strong doubts, as to whether or not he's going to be starting somewhere next year. I don't think there's a big market out there for Cam Newton. You take away the MVP season, like I said, where he went 15-1. Cam Newton's record, if you remove that year, is 53-54-1. Since 2016, he's completing just 59% of his passes while throwing 44 interceptions. You look across the NFL, there aren't many teams that are in need of a starting quarterback. New England does now, and there are some whispers that they could be interested in trading for Cam Newton. But I really think that they're going to go after somebody in the draft. I guess the Redskins need a quarterback since Dwayne Haskins was disappointing last year, but I can't really blame him for that. He was put in a position to fail. But with the number 2 draft pick in Washington, do they really need to go after Cam Newton at the quarterback position? I mean, it is the Washington Redskins, so it wouldn't surprise me if they offered him a contract extension for $30 million a year. The Chargers, they wouldn't make sense. I don't think Cam Newton would fit Anthony Lynn's system. They're out of the Tom Brady sweepstakes now. I think they're going to go with Tyrod Taylor to open the season, or draft Tua or Justin Herbert. So the only other team that I can really think of was the Chicago Bears. I could see Cam fitting Matt Nagy's system if they returned to a run-heavy approach they had back in 2018, but then they went out and got Nick Foles. The biggest question surrounding Cam, though, will he be able to be that dual-threat quarterback that he was a few years ago? I can't see another team in the NFL right now that needs Cam Newton. Chicago, to me, was the only one that made sense. So, Cam Newton is probably going to be a backup next year. And with no other teams really looking for starters, this is bad news for Carolina because they aren't going to be able to demand much in return for him in a trade. Like I said, I don't think Cam Newton's going to be a starting quarterback in 2020. Jameis Winston, on the other hand, I think he has more upside than Cam Newton. I know that sounds crazy because he's been a turnover machine his entire NFL career. Been in the league for 5 years. Thrown for over 4,000 yards in 3 of those 5 seasons. Passed for 121 touchdowns. To put that number in perspective, Cam Newton has been in the NFL since 2011 and has thrown for 182 touchdowns. Do the math. Jameis Winston's an accurate passer. He's elusive in the pocket. He's tough to bring down. If he didn't throw interceptions as often as my friend Hank throws up when he's drunk, then we would be talking about Jameis Winston being a top 5 quarterback in the NFL. If you listen to the national news media, they're all saying that Winston won't have a starting job next season, that he'll be a backup, either in Tampa or elsewhere. I know he won't be a backup in Tampa. They're not going to pay him, and I can't see him sticking around being demoted, backing up Tom Brady. Jameis Winston is going to have to take less money and work on a short-term contract. He's going to have to prove himself. He's going to have to go somewhere and win the starting job. But I think it's going to happen. I could see Jameis Winston signing with the Jacksonville Jaguars. One, it gives him a great opportunity to be a starting quarterback again. If you give me the choice between Jameis Winston and Gardner Minshew, I'm taking Jameis Winston every fucking day. It also gives him the chance to resurrect his career on a rebuilding team where there won't be any pressure to perform. His years in Tampa were filled with pressure from the beginning, from the time he was drafted. He was a number 1 pick. He was expected to revive a franchise that hadn't made the playoffs since 2007. Hadn't won a playoff game since the year they won the Super Bowl in 2002. Then there were the questions back in 2018, 2017, surrounding Dirk Cutter and his job. Many people blamed Jameis Winston when his head coach was eventually fired. After that, Bruce Arians comes in. There were high expectations on this team entering last season. You got a great offensive-minded head coach, talented team around him. Jameis Winston was expected to lead Tampa into the playoffs in 2019. And they probably would have made it had he not thrown 30 fucking interceptions. He won't have any of that pressure in Jacksonville. Expectations will be low. They have a decent group of young receivers, dependable running back in Leonard Fournette, something he lacked his last couple of years in Tampa. I could see And I think that Jameis Winston will be the starter in Jacksonville next season. Now, in a move that surprised absolutely no one, hardly even made the news, the Indianapolis Colts signed Phillip Rivers to a one-year contract, paying him $25 million. I actually think that this is a mistake by the Colts. Here's why. I think the Colts had their quarterback in Jacoby Brissett. When Andrew Luck suddenly retired before the beginning of last season, I had serious doubts about Brissett. I had Indy going from winning the AFC South to not making the playoffs at all. Now, they didn't end up making the playoffs, but that wasn't Jacoby Brissett's fault. He was injured the last half of the season. He was not the same quarterback he was weeks 1 through 8, as well as T.Y. Hilton, who was injured as well. The Colts were also banged up on the defensive side of the ball. Indianapolis had a roster last year that could have contended if not for the injuries. Don't forget, they started out 5-2. First half of the season, Jacoby Brissett threw for nearly 1,600 yards, 14 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. Had his season not been derailed by injury and he kept up that production, he would have been mentioned as a fucking MVP candidate. Instead of being patient, trying Jacoby Brissett again in 2020, and possibly, if he played well, having a potential future franchise quarterback, the Colts go out and sign Phillip Rivers, who was god-fucking awful last season. Rivers has been pretty fucking bad 4 of the last 5 years. Since 2015, Phillip Rivers is 35-45. Yeah, he's put up great numbers, thrown for over 4,000 yards each year. He's also thrown 20-plus interceptions 2 of the past 5 years. There was absolutely no excuse for the Los Angeles Chargers not to make the playoffs last season. And you can't blame the Melvin Gordon holdout either. I know he wasn't the same running back he was in 2018. But the Chargers had enough offensively to win more than 5 games. Hell, Phillip Rivers was responsible for 4 or 5 losses on his own. 4 interceptions against the Chiefs in Week 11, lost by 7. 3 interceptions against Oakland in Week 10, lost by 2. He single-handedly lost the game against Minnesota in Week 15 with his 4 turnovers. Long term, I think this will be viewed as a mistake by Indianapolis. Bringing in a 38-year-old, broken-down quarterback many years past his prime to replace Jacoby Brissett, who was damn good for you last year until he and most of the team was injured. I think this is a mistake on the part of the Colts. Let's move on to one of my favorite punching bags in the NFL. Here we go again. Another free agency period filled with excitement from fans of the Cleveland Browns. It seems like we go through this every year, all off season. We're going to hear how great the 2020 Cleveland Browns will be. I have a guy that works in my office building that's from Cleveland. Huge fan of the Browns. Came by my office the other day telling me that the Browns were going to win the AFC North. How great the free agency acquisitions were the team made. This is going to be our year in Cleveland. I heard all of this last offseason. Now, to be fair, the Browns have a great free agency class. Cleveland signed Jack Conklin at right tackle, a position they desperately needed to fill since Baker Mayfield spent most of last season running for his life or planted firmly on his ass. Got a good tight end in Austin Hooper. Also got a reliable quarterback in Case Keenum, who I'm going to talk about more in just a second. Let's stop the excitement for a second in Cleveland. This is the Cleveland fucking Browns that we're talking about. This is the same team who last season was telling the world they were taking the Steelers' place atop the division in the AFC North. While at the same time, I guess they forgot that Lamar Jackson was in Baltimore and were the favorites to win the division. This is the same team that hasn't made the playoffs since 2002. This is the same team that hasn't won a playoff game since 1994. Some of you listening to this podcast weren't even alive the last time the Browns won a fucking playoff game. This is the same team that's had a total of 2 playoff appearances in the last 30 years. So don't at me that I'm hating on the Browns when I say that I'm not buying into this team being a legitimate threat or a playoff contender. They're going to have to prove it to me first. Now, I thought that the Case Keenum signing was rather interesting. Cleveland head coach Kevin Stefanski and Case Keenum have history. Stefanski was the quarterback's coach in Minnesota when Keenum led the Vikings to the NFC Championship game a couple of years ago. So he knows Kevin Stefanski's system. Now, you could look at this one of 2 ways. One, Stefanski is bringing in Case Keenum to mentor Baker Mayfield, to help him learn the system. That could very well be part of the reason, or the main reason, but I think that's a naive way to look at this. I think Kevin Stefanski is bringing Case Keenum in as an insurance policy. Now, he may say all the right things to the media, but I don't think Stefanski is a believer in Baker Mayfield. At least not yet. And I wouldn't expect him to be. I know Baker Mayfield is famous. I know his face is all over your TV. He's a big name. But what I've seen from him the past 2 years, he's not a good NFL quarterback. He's thrown 35 interceptions in 2 years. To put that in perspective, Jameis Winston, the turnover machine himself, threw 33 interceptions his first 2 years in the league. Baker Mayfield is unproven. 2020 is going to be a crucial year for him. This is a make or break season for Baker Mayfield. The honeymoon period is over. He's not a rookie anymore. He's coming up on his 3rd season. If he gets off to a start like he did last season, where the Browns are 2-6 going into the second half of the year, Stefanski has a proven quarterback in Case Keenum he can put in and try and salvage the season. Signing Case Keenum is a brilliant move by Kevin Stefanski. It's a win-win for him. Hopefully it motivates Baker Mayfield to take the offseason seriously, to take minicamp, OTAs, training camp seriously. I don't think there's going to be a quarterback competition in Browns camp this summer. Baker Mayfield is the starter right now. But you know it's got to be in the back of Baker Mayfield's mind that Case Keenum is on that sideline. If it doesn't motivate and Baker Mayfield doesn't improve, then Stefanski can go with Case Keenum, who he already has a relationship with, already experienced success with. Even though they're the Cleveland Browns, this team is too talented not to make the playoffs. There's no excuses anymore. I don't care if Kevin Stefanski is a rookie head coach. They've got the pieces in place in Cleveland to be a playoff team at minimum. Whether or not Baker Mayfield is the quarterback that's going to lead them into the playoffs remains to be seen. Like I said a second ago, this is a critical season for Baker Mayfield. A couple of years ago, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers brought in Ryan Fitzpatrick to be Jameis Winston's backup. Winston was suspended for the first 3 games of the season. So Ryan Fitzpatrick started out the year, and he was hot. Beat New Orleans first week of the season. The Bucs started out 2-1. Ended up keeping the starting job once Jameis Winston returned for about a week or so. Then the rest of the season, it was a game of hot potato at quarterback. Jameis Winston would start, he would struggle, in comes Ryan Fitzpatrick. Fitzpatrick would start, struggle, in comes Jameis Winston. But the precedent was set. The precedent was Dirk Cutter didn't believe that Jameis Winston was a franchise quarterback. And look where he's at now. Likely to be a backup wherever he goes. Unless, of course, he lands in Jacksonville, where he'll take the job from Gardner Minshew because he's god-awful. Baker Mayfield is facing this same scenario in Cleveland this upcoming season. His career is on the line. If he doesn't get it right this year, with all the talent that's around him, he's going to find himself in the same situation that Jameis Winston is finding himself in now. A league of 32 teams, and none of them calling for you to be their starting quarterback. All right, I want to mention one thing before I get out of here. I saw something on SportsCenter Wednesday night that got me to thinking. And it's not good news for Major League Baseball. NBA Commissioner Adam Silver was talking with Rachel Nichols on ESPN Wednesday night, She was asking him the expected questions about what the NBA is going to do about the remainder of the regular season, the playoffs, blah, blah, blah. Really no news at this point, so nothing really interesting was revealed about that. But one thing Adam Silver said caught my attention. The traditional NBA season runs from October to June. With the coronavirus outbreak, obviously the NBA is looking to revamp the league calendar for this year. But this could turn into a permanent change. Adam Silver said that some owners are pushing to change the league schedule from October to June to December to August. With this type of calendar, I'd assume the regular season would start on Christmas Day, run through early to mid-June. Playoffs would run from mid-June to mid-August. Now, this would be a brilliant change, in my opinion, for the NBA. The league would pretty much avoid the NFL regular season. Only thing they would have to deal with is the playoffs in the month of January. February to August would belong solely to the NBA. Now, the reason they've never done this in the past is because summertime has always been looked at as a dead time for television. That's why traditionally, your TV shows used to run from September to May. But that's no longer the case in today's world. We all carry televisions around in our hands every day. We can watch TV from anywhere. Power, one of my favorite shows, one of the most popular shows on premium cable, it airs on Stars, always aired during the summer, June to August or early September. I told you last week when the league postponed the season that they could use this as an opportunity to experiment with changes. This is a change I support 100%. The NBA needs to run from December to August. It makes sense. If the NBA decides to do this, it would mean the death of Major League Baseball in this country, at least from a national perspective. Honestly, baseball's already pretty much dead from a national perspective anyway. They run unopposed in the months of July and August every year. What do we talk about in July? It's not the fucking pennant race in the AL East. We're talking about NBA free agency. What are we talking about in August? NFL preseason, college football. September to January is dominated by the NFL. February to June, dominated by the NBA. Then July is dominated by NBA free agency. August dominated by the NFL preseason. Already, as of right now, there isn't 1 month in the year that Major League Baseball is in the national headlines. If the NBA runs their season and playoffs from December to August, forget about it. Baseball doesn't stand a chance in America. I think the powers that be in Major League Baseball know this as well. Over the past decade or so, baseball has become more of a regional sport. I remember growing up in the 90s. The Braves were nationally televised on TBS. The Cubs were on WGN. You had ESPN airing baseball 2 or 3 nights a week. Fox had Saturday baseball. Every night of the week in the summer, you could find a baseball game on TV. That's just not the case anymore. Hell, the playoffs in baseball aren't televised on network television until the World Series. The first couple of rounds are on FS2 or FS1, and some of the games are broadcast during the middle of the fucking afternoon during the work week. Why is that? Because baseball knows they have an older audience. Guys like me, millennials. The majority of us aren't watching Major League Baseball. We're watching the NFL and the NBA. The bottom line is, Major League Baseball is a relic of a bygone era. And there's nothing they can do that will make the game more popular. We live in a now society. Everything we do is instantaneous. Everything is fast-paced. We need information, we have it within 5 seconds in the palm of our hand. When we watch our favorite TV shows, we're fast-forwarding through commercials. Both the NFL and the NBA fit perfectly into this now generation. Games are fast-paced. Players on the field or on the court are quick. Baseball is a slow game. It's plodding. It's boring. And 95% of the players aren't involved on an every play basis, which is one of the reasons baseball struggles to create stars. If you buy a ticket to an NBA game to see LeBron James play, You know you're going to see them on the court for 30, 35 minutes of the game. You buy an NFL ticket to watch Drew Brees or Tom Brady. You know they're going to be on the field for every offensive play. You buy a ticket to watch your favorite MLB player. He'll be at the plate 3, 4 times a game. If you're lucky, maybe he'll catch a fly ball or something exciting like that. If you come to see a pitcher, good luck. They pitch once a fucking week. The truth is, baseball was actually on the decline in the mid-90s. The strike season, I believe it was 1994, when they lost that entire year due to the labor strike, left a bad taste in a lot of people's mouth. Same thing happened to the NHL about 15 years ago. But the home run chase in 1998 between Sammy Sosa and Mark McGwire saved Major League Baseball. And they rode that wave for about 7 or 8 years until Jose Canseco brought down the entire game when he exposed, 3/4 of the league for using steroids and HGH. And Major League Baseball's never recovered from that. If the NBA changes their regular season, starts going from December to August, it will be the final nail in the coffin for Major League Baseball in America from a national perspective. All right, that's all for today. I'll be back this weekend, probably Sunday. Make sure to click that like and subscribe button, hit that notification bell to receive all notifications from the channel. Leave me a comment in the section below. Let me know what you think of the podcast. You can follow me on Twitter at KC_BTL84. Try and enjoy your weekend on lockdown, your quarantine. Going to be a tough one for me. I'm not used to being cooped up in the house all weekend. Hoping to get in 18 holes of golf tomorrow. So enjoy your weekend, and I will see you on Sunday.